What happens when truth-telling collides with corporate silence? Former CNN anchor Don Lemon says that's exactly what cost him his job. After 17 years at the network, Lemon claims he was abruptly let go, not for ratings, not for scandal, but for refusing to compromise his voice. In interviews and his recent memoir, he reveals how his commitment to calling out hypocrisy, confronting uncomfortable truths, and challenging power structures made him a liability in a media landscape increasingly allergic to dissent. CNN insists the split was mutual, but Lemon says he was blindsided, informed by his agent without warning. He describes the accusations surrounding his exit, including claims of misogyny, as deeply hurtful and insists they were weaponized to silence him. This episode dives into the fallout, the contradictions, and the cost of candor in an industry built on spin. Was Lemon punished for being too honest, or was there more beneath the surface? Let's rewind the tape and find out. Rick Sanchez. Rick Sanchez, a Cuban-American journalist, worked at CNN from 2004 onward. In January 2010, he began hosting Rick's List, a 2-hour afternoon show. The show also had an 8 p.m. slot intermittently. On September 30th, 2010, on the satellite radio show Stand Up with Pete Dominick, Sanchez made a number of controversial statements. These statements including calling Jon Stewart a bigot, citing what Sanchez viewed as Stewart's criticism of him or similar personalities, saying that Stewart surrounds himself with people like him, that Stewart looks at the world through his upbringing, and that people like Sanchez feel marginalized by elite Northeast establishment liberals, including Stewart and Stephen Colbert. When Dominick pointed out that Stewart was Jewish, thus a minority, Sanchez remarked, somewhat sarcastically, that Jewish people are very powerless, and questioned the idea that Jews are truly an oppressed minority, particularly in the context of media influence. He suggested that everybody who runs CNN is a lot like Stewart, and that people in media networks are a lot like Stewart. He later walked back some of the stronger language, like bigot to prejudicial or uninformed, and he issued public apologies to those offended. He expressed that his comments were inartful. On October 1st, 2020, CNN officially announced that Rick Sanchez is no longer with the company. His show, Rick's List, was canceled. His time slots were filled by CNN Newsroom, etc. Sanchez had expressed dissatisfaction over being replaced in his 8 p.m. slot by Parker Spitzer, which may have contributed to frustration or resentment. Chris Cuomo. In early 2021, Chris continued covering news on Andrew Cuomo, who had been accused by women of harassment. In May 2021, reports surfaced that Chris Cuomo participated in strategy calls with Andrew Cuomo's aides. Well, CNN acknowledges the involvement but calls it a mistake. Chris issues an apology on air saying, "It will not happen again. It was a mistake because I put my colleagues here, who I believe in a bad spot." In August 2021, the New York Attorney General report finds that Andrew Cuomo harassed 11 women, and Governor Cuomo resigns shortly after the findings are released. Chris Cuomo again addresses the scandal, reiterating he only offered brotherly support and did not influence CNN's coverage. On November 29, 2011, the Attorney General released detailed records that Chris Cuomo used media contacts to gather information about his brother's accusers, and that he was more deeply involved in political strategy than previously admitted. On November 30th, 2021, CNN suspends Chris Cuomo indefinitely while the network states it will conduct an internal review with help from outside counsel. CNN says the new documents raised serious questions about Cuomo's journalistic conduct. On December 4th, 2021, CNN announces termination after an independent firm concludes Cuomo violated journalistic standards. Chris Cuomo was suspended earlier this week, pending further evaluation of new information. We retained a respected law firm to conduct the review and have terminated him effective immediately. In March 2022, Chris filed a $125 million arbitration claim against CNN. Cuomo alleges wrongful termination and claims CNN leadership, Jeff Zucker and Allison Gollust, knew about his actions all along, approved of many of them, and used him as a scapegoat to protect the network's reputation. Soledad O'Brien. In 2003, Soledad O'Brien joined CNN and became a prominent journalist and anchor for over a decade. She reported on major events and earned acclaim for her serious, fact-based reporting and documentaries. O'Brien was vocal about the importance of diverse voices in media and inclusion behind the scenes. In January 2013, CNN launched Starting Point, a morning show hosted by O'Brien aimed at serious and thoughtful news coverage. The show sought to offer a mix of hard news and in-depth interviews in a highly competitive morning slot. In June 2013, CNN canceled Starting Point after 6 months due to poor ratings, despite O'Brien's credibility and loyal viewership. The cancellation surprised many, especially the network's failure to promote the show aggressively. It was viewed by some as a signal of CNN's preference for more sensational, rating-driven programming over serious journalism. In mid-2013, following the cancellation, O'Brien left CNN altogether, and in interviews she expressed frustration with CNN's growing focus on entertainment-style news and viral content. She criticized the network's lack of progress on racial and ethnic diversity among on-air talent and newsroom leadership. O'Brien highlighted CNN's tendency to prioritize ratings over depth and nuance in reporting. She called attention to the underrepresentation of minorities at CNN, both in front of and behind the camera. She emphasized the need for news organizations to reflect America's diversity authentically and tackle substantive issues. O'Brien founded Starfish Media Group, her own production company focused on documentaries and storytelling about race, social justice, and marginalized communities. She dedicated herself to producing content that CNN, in her view, was unwilling or unable to support sufficiently. Jeffrey Lord. Jeffrey Lord, a political commentator at CNN, was widely recognized for his vocal support of conservative positions and his defense of Donald Trump during on-air debates. In August 2017, CNN cut ties with Lord after he tweeted the phrase "Sieg Heil" in response to Angelo Corsone, the president of Media Matters for America. Phrase, infamously associated with the Nazi Party, sparked immediate backlash. CNN described the tweet as indefensible and announced that Lord was no longer with the network. Lord claimed that the tweet was meant sarcastically, not as an endorsement of Nazism, but as a way to mock what he saw as authoritarian, fascist-style behavior by Media Matters, which had criticized CNN for keeping Lord as a contributor. He said his intent was to draw a parallel, albeit provocatively, between Media Matters' pressure campaigns and historical fascism. Following his dismissal, Lord publicly argued that CNN's decision was a mistake. He described his use of Sieg Heil as a metaphorical protest and framed the incident as a free speech issue, saying that political correctness and censorship were being used to silence conservative voices in mainstream media. Roland Martin. Roland Martin served as a CNN political analyst for several years, appearing on CNN programming, hosting specials, and offering commentary on race, politics, and social issues. Over time, he became one of CNN's more visible black voices. In 2017, Martin was temporarily suspended by CNN after posting tweets during the Super Bowl that were criticized by GLAAD as homophobic. He was reinstated after the suspension. In March 2013, it became public that CNN would not renew Martin's contract, which was due to expire on April 6th of 2013. Martin tweeted, "New boss wants his own peeps," referencing CNN's new president, Jeff Tucker, implying a personnel shakeup tied to leadership change. He confirmed his last at CNN would be April. Martin issued statements emphasizing that he had enjoyed his time there, praised colleagues, and affirmed he would continue his media work beyond CNN, TV One show, syndicated column, and radio. He vowed to fight to the last hour on the air, implying he intended to continue using his voice until his final day. He also expressed concern about who he spoke for, citing crew members, support staff, and marginalized voices who cheered him in everyday settings. While CNN confirmed that Martin's contract would end, they did not publicly offer a detailed explanation beyond the standard personnel decisions under new leadership. There's no public record in those sources of CNN executives directly refuting his claims of being sidelined or suppressed, though the network did not affirm all of his assertions. After leaving, Martin strongly criticized CNN's leadership, particularly white male executives, accusing them of being reluctant to promote strong, confident minorities. Brian Stelter. Brian Stelter worked as a media reporter at the New York Times, and he developed a reputation for covering media issues and how news is reported and shaped. In November 2013, Stelter joined CNN as the host of Reliable Sources, a long-running Sunday show focusing on media affairs, criticism, and analysis. Reliable Sources, under his tenure, regularly examined the interactions between media, politics, and public discourse. It often focused on misinformation and media bias, especially regarding conservative-leaning media outlets. Stelter frequently criticized what he viewed as disinformation and misleading narratives in conservative media, particularly Fox News, like in his show and in his book. He held up media accountability as essential, not just criticizing others, but sometimes dissecting his own network's shortcomings. In early 2022, Warner Bros. Discovery completed a merger of the parent companies, and CNN got a new boss, Chris Licht. Licht was seen in media coverage as wanting to shift CNN's tone to be less opinionated and leaning in one direction. That was commentary that Stelter's style of being critical, especially of conservative media, pointing out information, etc., had made him a frequent target of conservative criticism. Under the new leadership's attempts at cost-cutting and reframing the network's image, some of his work and show format became controversial within and outside of CNN. On August 18, 2022, CNN announced that it would cancel Reliable Sources and that Brian Stelter would depart the network. The final episode of Reliable Sources aired on Sunday, August 21, 2022. Along with the show's cancellation, its staff was laid off. John Harwood. John Harwood is an American journalist. Before CNN, he worked for the Wall Street Journal as chief Washington correspondent. He joined CNN in January 2020 as a White House correspondent. In early September 2022, President Joe Biden delivered a speech that criticized MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy. Harwood covered and commented on the speech. In that commentary, Harwood said Biden's core point about the threat to democracy is true. Harwood also said, "We're brought up to believe there are two different political parties with different points of view. That's not what we're talking about. These are not honest disagreements. The Republican Party right now is led by a dishonest demagogue." Hours after these comments, Harwood announced via Twitter that September 2nd, 2022 would be his last day at CNN. He tweeted, "Personal news, today's my last day at CNN. Proud of the work, thanks to my colleagues. I look forward to figuring out what's next." Sources report that Harwood still had time remaining on his CNN contract when he left, implying his departure was not just at the scheduled end of an agreement. CNN's public statement was minimal. They appreciated his work and wished him well. No detailed official reason was given. By mid-2022, CNN had new leadership under Chris Licht, who became chairman and CEO. In his final public remarks as a CNN correspondent, Harwood expressed pride in his work and in the journalism he had practiced. He didn't explicitly say he was forced out because of his comments, but the sudden timing immediately after a critical on-air segment fueled suspicion. Amber Lyon. Amber joined CNN in June 2010 as a correspondent in the CNN Special Investigators and Documentary Unit. Early in her CNN tenure, she'd covered multiple investigative topics, like her reporting on Craigslist, which was significant. In March 2011, Lyon traveled with a 4-person CNN crew to Bahrain as part of a broader documentary on the Arab Spring to report the use of internet and social media by activists and to document government repression. During that mission, the team planned interviews with pro-democracy activists and attempted to film in villages and hospitals under stress. Many sources who had agreed to talk vanished, went into hiding, or retracted cooperation, apparently due to fears of government retaliation. Bahraini security forces allegedly raided homes of activists, including burning residences, and arrested people who cooperated with the journalists. Lion and her team were detained and the cameras were seized, video footage is deleted and held for about 6 hours. They covertly preserved video footage by hiding it from seizure attempts. The documentary was titled iRevolution. In that documentary, the Bahrain portion was relatively short, whereas the rest addressed protests and digital activism in Egypt and Tunisia. iRevolution aired once on CNN US on June 19, 2011, with a replay on June 25th. However, the documentary was never aired on CNN International, despite its subject being relevant to the broader region. Critics, notably Lion herself and Glenn Greenwald, alleged that CNN International suppressed or refused to air the documentary because of financial or political pressures, particularly from the Bahraini regime, which the network had a business relationship with via sponsored content. In March 2012, Lion was laid off from CNN, part of a restructuring of its documentaries division. After her layoff, she continued to speak out, using social media and interviews to push the story further. In August 2012, she tweeted criticisms. CNN's Business Affairs Office reportedly contacted her agent, threatening that severance and insurance benefits would be cut if she continued public commentary on this issue. Peter Arnett. Peter Arnett is a highly experienced war correspondent. He won a Pulitzer Prize for his reporting on the Vietnam War for the Associated Press. He became especially well-known during the 1991 Gulf War for his reporting from behind enemy lines in Baghdad for CNN, including live coverage and challenging U.S. military and political narratives. His reputation has included controversial segments in the past. Like in 1988, there was a disputed CNN documentary in which he was involved that accused U.S. commandos of using sarin gas in Laos. That documentary was later retracted, and Arnett was reprimanded. Arnett was in Baghdad covering the U.S. invasion of Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and also for National Geographic Explorer. At that time, many other U.S. reporters had left Baghdad due to safety concerns, while Arnett remained one of the few Americans reporting from within the city. In March 2003, Arnett granted an interview with state-run Iraqi television. The interview was broadcast in Iraq, Iraqi state TV, and then picked up by various outlets, causing a significant public controversy in the U.S. NBC initially defended him, saying the interview was granted as a professional courtesy and that his remarks were analytical in nature. On the Today Show on NBC the next day, Arnett apologized, saying he made a misjudgment in giving that interview. He said, "I want to apologize to the American people for clearly making a misjudgment over the weekend by giving an interview to Iraqi television." Very shortly after being fired, he was hired by Britain's Daily Mirror, less than 24 hours after NBC dropped him. Carl Bernstein. Carl Bernstein rose to fame in the 1970s as one of the Washington Post reporters, alongside Bob Woodward, who uncovered the Watergate scandal, leading to President Richard Nixon's resignation. He has since become a frequent commentator on American politics, media ethics, and government accountability, joining CNN as a contributor and analyst in the 2000s. In December 2016, on CNN, Bernstein accused then-President-elect Donald Trump of having a disdain for the truth and said the media needed to adjust how it reported on his presidency. In February 2017, on CNN's Reliable Sources, Bernstein said that Trump's attacks on the press were more treacherous than Nixon's and warned that the U.S. was facing a political and media crisis. In July 2017, Bernstein described the Trump presidency as a malignant presidency, citing behavior that undermined democratic institutions. In August 2018, Bernstein co-authored a CNN report alleging Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, was prepared to testify that Trump knew in advance about the Trump Tower meeting with Russians. In 2019, Bernstein continued making high-profile appearances on CNN and op-eds during the Trump impeachment inquiries. In July 2021, Bernstein stated on CNN that Trump was our own American war criminal for his role in the COVID-19 crisis and the January 6th Capitol riot. In 2022, Bernstein appeared in multiple CNN programs and documentaries covering Trump's legal problems, and the legacy of disinformation in U.S. politics. He discussed media ethics, defending the principle that the truth is not neutral, advocating for accountability journalism. Miles O'Brien. Miles O'Brien joined CNN in 1992 after working in local television news. He became CNN's chief science and space correspondent, covering aerospace, NASA, and technology stories. O'Brien was widely respected for his deep technical understanding and thorough reporting. He led CNN's coverage of major events, including the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster in 2003, the Mars rover landings in 2004 and 2008, and numerous NASA missions and space shuttle launches. He often anchored space-related broadcasts from NASA facilities and science-themed CNN specials. In December 2008, CNN abruptly dissolved the entire Science, Environment, and Technology Unit, sometimes called the Science and Technology Beat. The move was part of a wider round of staff cuts under CNN President John Klein. O'Brien's contract was not renewed, ending his 16-year tenure at the network. The source, the New York Times, said CNN has eliminated its entire Science, Technology, and Environment News Unit as part of broader staff cuts. Miles O'Brien and 6 producers were let go. CNN explained the move as part of a reorganization aimed at consolidating coverage rather than eliminating topics. Many journalists and science communicators criticized the decision, saying it signaled a retreat from substantive science coverage. The Columbia Journalism Review wrote that the firing symbolized a blow to serious science journalism on cable. The Washington Post reported that several CNN employees privately felt O'Brien's work was too detailed, too serious, and too expensive for the direction CNN was taking at the time, which leaned more toward general interest and political news. Christiane Amanpour's team. Christiane Amanpour had been a prominent international correspondent at CNN, known for global affairs reporting and anchoring internationally oriented programming. For instance, CNN's press materials note, Amanpour spent more than 25 years reporting from around the globe for CNN. Her global brand and CNN's international news effort were historically significant for the network. In March 2010, The Guardian reported that Amanpour would depart CNN to join ABC News as anchor of This Week. Later, CNN announced in 2012 that Amanpour would return to anchor a weekday program at CNN International. These moves suggest a period of transition for Amanpour as she balanced roles and as CNN's international strategy evolved. CNN announced job cuts as part of a reorganization, and 50 employees were cut, mostly in New York, including some news-gathering roles. In October 2014, media outlets reported that CNN dumped or cut Amanpour's entire 4-person New York staff. Even after the 2014 staffing changes, Amanpour continued to produce internationally oriented segments and maintained a presence, though perhaps with less visible New York staff support. FTV Live reported that even with the New York staff cuts, Amanpour will still produce international news segments and a daily show out of London. In November 2023, AP News reported Amanpour would debut a new weekly show, the Amanpour Hour, on CNN's North American service, marking her return to a more visible role after years of reduced presence on the company's North American network. Kyra Phillips. In 1999, Kyra Phillips began her career with CNN, having previously worked at various local stations. Over the course of her career, she's worked as an anchor at the CNN newsroom, where she's also contributed to documentaries and investigative reporting. In 2012, she made a brief transfer to the sister network HLN. As part of a lineup change that was announced by CNN in June 2012, Phillips was transferred to HLN to serve as the host of the midday show Raising America with Kyra Phillips. Her talk show on HLN was directed at American families and the contemporary parenting challenges that people face. The news that Kyra Phillips would be leaving CNN and joining ABC News as a correspondent based in Washington, D.C. was publicly disclosed in April of 2018. According to the official comments released by ABC and CNN, this was a career change rather than a termination of employment. Tony Harris. Tony Harris joined CNN in September 2004 coming from local news, WGCL in Atlanta. At CNN, he anchored shows including CNN Saturday Morning and CNN Sunday Morning with Betty Nagayan, and later co-anchored CNN Newsroom. He covered major breaking news assignments, and his work at CNN earned him recognition. He was part of teams that won Peabody and DuPont Awards. By December 2010, CNN announced that Tony Harris would be leaving the network, marking approximately 6 years with CNN. An article from AJC in May 2017 quotes Harris saying that while he was at CNN, he could see the shift to more panel television punditry and felt it wasn't a fit for him. According to TV Newser via Adweek, Tony Harris left CNN at the end of December 2010 after about 6 years with the network. At a later interview, Harris reflected, "When CNN didn't renew my contract, I already sensed the changing landscape there. However, the departure announcement framed it as a contract not renewed rather than a firing." Harris's own comments suggest that he felt editorial changes at CNN influenced his decision. After leaving CNN, Harris joined Al Jazeera English, or AJE, in April 2011, anchoring from Doha, Qatar. In the AJC interview, Harris praised AJE's global focus and commented on feeling as free there as I have ever worked. He contrasted this with his time at CNN, where he sensed a pivot in format and editorial style. Harris has highlighted that during his time, CNN shifted towards more pundit-heavy coverage rather than deeper reporting. Kate Bolduan. Kate Bolduan joined CNN as a political correspondent and anchor after previously working at local TV stations. Over the 2010s, she became a visible face on CNN's morning programming, notably co-anchoring New Day alongside other hosts. Her style included on-air reporting, anchoring breaking news, and engaging interviews. In 2015, during her maternity leave from New Day, media outlets reported that Bolduan was replaced permanently, or effectively, in her co-anchor slot while on leave. A report by Music Times, citing the New York Post, noted Bolduan will be permanently replaced by Ellison Camerata. Bolduan will now co-host At This Hour at 11 a.m. In her own remarks to Cosmopolitan, Bolduan said, "My whole life is changing with my baby being born, and then my career is changing at the same time. This stage marks a clear milestone, a shift from the high-visibility morning co-anchor role to a less prominent time slot." In an analysis by The Wrap, it was noted that CNN had far fewer female solo anchors on weekdays compared to competitors, and none in the 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. time slot. Kate Bolduan was identified as one of only 3 female solo anchors at CNN during weekdays in that study. In a podcast interview with Mediaite, Bolduan said, "I have this frustration when people talk about the media and all of CNN. You watch my show, that's not what I was doing in 2016 necessarily, and it wasn't what I was doing in 2020. These sources show she's been publicly speaking about issues of gender representation and how female anchors are treated or positioned in the network. There is less direct documentation from Bolduan than she was explicitly prevented from doing hard news or that she said so in those exact terms." 2015 maternity leave replacement article suggests that her career progression was altered during a leave, a move frequently cited in discussions of gender bias in media. Ali Velshi. Ali Velshi started in Canadian business news broadcasting before moving to the United States in 2001 to join CNN's financial news channel, CNN-FN. At CNN-FN, he anchored shows such as Your Money, and after CNN-FN shut down, he became part of CNN's main network as a business correspondent and anchor. Over time, he became known as CNN's chief business correspondent, covering significant economic stories such as U.S. auto industry issues, debt ceiling debates, and the financial crisis, and anchoring business-focused programming. In April 2013, it was announced that Velshi would leave CNN after nearly 12 years for Al Jazeera America. According to a TV Newser Adweek piece, he left CNN on the best terms and cited he had a great opportunity to stretch some new muscles and grow something. He began hosting Real Money with Ali Velshi on Al Jazeera America, which later became Ali Velshi on Target. In interviews, Velshi said that at Al Jazeera America, he shifted from primarily business market anchoring to more substantive economics and global reporting. I was fundamentally a business anchor, and at Al Jazeera I was doing much more economic and global stuff. Al Jazeera America ceased operations in April 2016. In October 2016, MSNBC announced that Velshi would join its network and NBC News, highlighting his economic and business expertise. At MSNBC, he has hosted programs such as Velshi and Rule with Stephanie Rule and a weekly show, Velshi. While the official statements from CNN about his departure do not specifically cite editorial disagreements, Velshi's own comments suggest a desire for more substantive journalism beyond business anchoring. Don Lemon. Don Lemon joined CNN in 2006. He became a prominent on-air host and got his show Don Lemon Tonight around 2014. And later he moved into a morning show co-host role on CNN's This Morning. As an experienced anchor, his role blended commentary and news, while he was known for outspoken takes and a distinctive style. In February 2023, Lemon made remarks about Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley's age, saying she was not in her prime, and that a woman is considered in her prime in her 20s, 30s, and maybe her 40s. He later apologized, calling the comments inartful and irrelevant. Other reporting from Variety cited allegations of long-standing behavior issues, misogynistic behavior, diva-like behavior, and tensions with producers and female colleagues. Internally, CNN cited that on the morning show, his performance with the network's female-skewing audience was not working. On April 24, 2023, Lemon announced on social media, "I was informed this morning by my agent that I have been terminated by CNN." He further said, "After 17 years at CNN, I would have thought that someone in management would have had the decency to tell me directly. At no time was I ever given any indication that I would not be able to continue to do the work I have loved at the network." In interviews, Lemon stated that his firing resulted from his commitment to telling the truth. T.J. Holmes. T.J. Holmes joined CNN in 2006 as an anchor and correspondent after earlier local news work. He became the anchor for the weekend edition of CNN Saturday and Sunday Morning. During his weekend anchor tenure, he commented publicly on newsroom diversity and decision-making, such as, "If you're the face on air, but the decision-making room is all one type of person, what's the difference?" In December 2011, reports surfaced that Holmes would leave CNN at the end of the year. CNN's internal memo via TV Week said he was departing to pursue other opportunities. According to TV Week, Holmes signed a talent deal with BET Networks, moving off CNN and onto a new show. After leaving CNN, Holmes hosted a show on BET called Don't Sleep that aimed to cover current events and human interest issues. In interviews after his departure, he reflected on his career at CNN and the broader news industry context, like he acknowledged changes happening behind the scenes in the newsroom. Holmes publicly commented in 2009, while still at CNN, that change in newsrooms happens behind the scenes, and noted that the importance of not only having visible anchors but also decision-makers in the newsroom reflecting diverse viewpoints. This indicates he was aware of and acknowledged internal tensions around newsroom decision-making and story selection processes. Zain Verjee. Zain Verjee was born in Kenya and later became Canadian/Kenyan. Before CNN, she worked in radio and local Kenyan television. In the year 2000, or around then, she joined CNN, specifically CNN International, as a correspondent and anchor. At CNN, she worked in multiple locations, Nairobi, Atlanta, and Washington, and anchored programs such as World One on CNN International. Over her roughly 14 years at CNN, she covered major global stories, including African features and U.S. foreign policy, and anchored daytime programs targeting international audiences. As a Kenyan-born anchor at a major international news network, her role was somewhat pioneering, especially for African-origin journalists in global media. In April 2014, she announced her departure from CNN after 14 years. Her message to colleagues said, "It's been 14 years of friendship, growth, excitement from Nairobi to Atlanta. I would like to start a new chapter in my life, one where I grow in a new direction and always with enthusiasm and energy." She stated she'd be starting her own company, Zain Verjee Group, and focusing on areas that she found personally fulfilling, creating and writing. After leaving CNN, Verjee shifted her professional focus to storytelling from and about Africa, including founding a media production company oriented toward African business, culture, and narrative. She's talked publicly about the challenge of African stories being underrepresented or misrepresented in Western global media. Verjee has explained explicitly how Africa is portrayed in global newsrooms. For instance, she noted that many in Western media treat Africa largely as a problem space, crises, war, suffering, rather than giving it full-spectrum stories. In her own words, she's argued for broadening perceptions of the continent and building platforms where African voices lead the storytelling. Lisa Desjardins. Before CNN, Lisa worked at outlets such as the Associated Press and local television stations. She joined CNN around 2005, serving as CNN Radio's congressional correspondent, among other roles, in the Washington Bureau. While at CNN Radio, she covered major political and legislative topics, like a 2011 transcript shows her reporting on House staff bonuses during budget shutdown debates. Reports indicate that around June 2013, CNN Radio was shut down, and many staff were either transferred or left. In the case of Desjardins, she was transferred from CNN Radio to CNN's Washington Bureau as a Capitol Hill reporter. The Wrap reported that Desjardins, then CNN Radio's Capitol Hill correspondent, accepted a buyout offer amid a broader wave of layoffs at Turner CNN. According to her biography, Desjardins left CNN in August 2014 after about 9 years at the company. In October 2014, she joined PBS NewsHour as a political reporter. At PBS NewsHour, Desjardins' role emphasized in-depth, complex political coverage like reporting from the U.S. Capitol, traveling to constituencies, translating fiscal policy issues into accessible stories. Thanks for watching Past Paradise, where Hollywood legends come home. If you enjoyed today's look into the topic, Don Lemon says he was fired from CNN because of his commitment to telling the truth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Got a star or story you want next? Drop it in the comments. Until then, keep the nostalgia alive, only on Past Paradise. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon